Hello and welcome to episode 11 of SCI Fridays. What's SOC got to do with it? That's right. I am channeling my internal Tina Turner. If you didn't know she was there, she is there. And hey, Al, we have a bit of sweetness on the show today. We have Captain Save, the Warren himself.
How long do I have to hold this camera in my hand?
You can put it down any second now, bud. Any
Great,
moment.
fantastic. There we go.
It's not conventional for a show, Warren. I'm sorry, but I'm sure you would have at least watched one episode of SCI Fridays, so you kind of have an idea of what this is about, right? I mean,
yeah, definitely. It's simply the best security show.
And which episode was your favorite?
The first one.
No.
I like that.
The one about security. That one.
Did we practice this? That's new. Simply the best. I like that. Yeah. So what SOC got to do with it? But question, seeing as Nick's already asked if you've watched the show, have you seen the jingle?
I have not.
Should we roll the jingle for him?
Let's roll the jingle. Whew. Clearly this show has way more money than I thought it did.
Well, we have had some complaints from the elderly that our jingle might be a little bit too loud. I don't know if you have any opinions on that.
If it's too loud, you're too old.
Well, welcome to SCI Fridays, your portal into security compliance, identity management, and you. If you're new to the channel, we talk about all of the things, simply the best things.
All of them.
That get us scared, dismayed, excited, but scared or dismayed. And I keep on stumbling here, scared, dismayed, or excited about security and governance in the cloud. So pull up a chair, grab a coffee. This is Friday, 12 p.m. So the last plane doesn't fly. I keep getting confused with the times that we actually go live on. Right, but grab a coffee or a whiskey, and depending on where you are in the world, and listen to us talk about security and compliance.
I don't think this is a drink-friendly show. Otherwise, I would have had one.
It's a vape-friendly show.
I would have had a whiskey.
Well, it's Friday afternoon. Since look, I don't know what you do on a Friday, but a lot of people watch the show completely inebriated and yet are convinced of the value.
Okay, all right. Well, the next time I'm on, I will definitely have my whiskey ready.
We can do a wine and wine. That's
Sounds
quite
good.
popular.
But
Sounds familiar.
What's the second wine? Are we whining about security? Is that
Well, you whine about something.
Okay, preferably not security. Well,
and maybe the topic of the day. Yes, today's show.
Yes, we already. How many?
Am I restating things? It's like we haven't rehearsed this.
I can't say listeners because people are watching this. For the watchers, are they watchers, viewers of the show? This is how it goes every week. We're 11 episodes in, and Nick and I still stumble over who's going to say what, even though we do have show notes. So welcome, Warren du Toit. I don't know how else to introduce you than Warren du Toit, right? Accolades. Do we do accolades, Nick?
We would be here for weeks, nay, months, if we had to mention all of them.
So Warren, you used to be an MVP, and then you joined the Blue Badge crew, right?
I did.
Microsoft
People,
right? Is that it? But you're an Apple fanboy, and you like Linux.
Correct. Yes, open source. Microsoft loves open source, right?
And so do you.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, I'm a cloud solution architect for Microsoft here in South Africa. And strangely enough, I mean, I focus on the FSI sector. So doing a security show, it pretty much, it's in the wheelhouse, right? There's so much security all day.
So Warren and I share a show, and Nick and Warren shares a show, but neither the three of us don't share a show. So I think that's important to note as well. Just a little bit more about how Warren features in both my life and Nick's life at different times.
But we've learned to share the Warren.
We have. We've learned to share everything, James.
Well, I'd like to put some delimiters around that to keep the show family friendly, because not quite everything. I'm just going to leave
So
things
speaking
there.
about delimiters, how do you limit yourself from being attacked? And that's what the show is really all about. And in Microsoft's world, right, and we talk about cloud modernization all day, every day. That's our job. How do we help customers move to the cloud? Now, traditionally, we've always talked about bricks and mortar. This is perimeter security, and this is the world that we exist in, right? On-prem, there's a building, pull the network cable out, and I must sound like a broken record now because I always reference that. Pull the network cable out, and I've thwarted an attack. But moving to the cloud, the world... What, Nick?
You reference that one a lot, the cable,
You need
pulling
to put
the
your
cable
hand
out.
up when you want to talk on the show, Nick. Otherwise,
So every week you talk about the cable being out. I think we know that you pull the cable out, and that's how you secure your systems.
For the most
But not
part,
in the cloud,
yes.
right?
Now, moving to the cloud, there's all these new terms now that security people have to sort of remember. Security Operations Center and DevSecOps and NetSecOps and SIEM and SOAR and XDR. There's so many of these things that we actually have a section in the show called, why does he do that?
Sorry, so many.
This is a runway success, right?
I'm just amplifying you because you're speaking so well, and I'm enjoying it.
No, we can't ruin the flow. You're doing
No.
It's the monologue that makes the show.
Monologue. It's true. It's true.
So
Monologue
when I finish
away.
a sentence, I'll just pause and wait for Nick to say the last three words of my sentence, right? Anyhow, coming back to what we're talking about. Security operations in the Microsoft Cloud, right? M365, D365, Power Platform, and obviously Azure. Where does the world fit? And Warren, you were saying that you spend a lot of time talking to customers as a CSA, Cloud Solutions Architect for Microsoft. How does security operations fit into your world when you are dealing with customers?
You know, it's more like, how do you fit into their world, right? I think not only have they been doing it a very, very long time, and now that they move into this cloud space, you'd actually be surprised how forward-thinking a lot of them are, especially some of the big FSIs in the country, right? And they have a set of rules that they have to abide by, right? And, you know, there's a lot of this. It's not just being compromised that is a thing anymore. It's like also like reputational damage is a big thing, right? You look at some of the news reports about somebody being hacked or somebody losing something somewhere or whatever the case may be. Is you're not going to use that particular product so willingly the next time, right? Especially when it comes to a financial institution, right? So they've lost your data. There's a good chance that you're not going to go back there. So the reputational damage is sometimes worth sort of more than actually them sort of being compromised themselves, right? So they have a set of guidelines that they've got, and those guidelines are in cement, right? And so you'll find slowly but surely, as a cloud provider, you start finding ways to architect these solutions to meet those requirements, right? You know, there's a tick box. How you tick that box is what's crucial, right? So if you can, and if it's not a forward-thinking organization, they'll be like, there's only one way to tick that box. But if it is a forward-thinking organization, there's more than one way to tick that box, especially when it comes to security, compliance, audits, monitoring, encryption, all that lovely stuff, right? So you'll see when it comes to sort of security operations centers and things like that, you'll see there's an all-encompassing view, and they need to start with that rule book, right? And as long as you can tick all the boxes in the rule book, generally the project will get over the line, security will sign it off, and somebody's going to go and implement the solution, right? But they have to have that rule book laid down first. It's not one of those things that you can sort of retrofit afterwards. And it's one of the reasons why the cloud adoption framework exists. And you'll see it's not only Microsoft that has a cloud adoption framework. It's AWS has a cloud adoption framework. Lots of people have cloud adoption frameworks, and then they take them and they sort of mold things around. And so generally what happens is there's those guardrails, there's those blueprints, there's those policies, there's Defender for Cloud, all that stuff that gets put down first, which the security team then knows that there is no chance that XYZ is going to be deployed, right? So now I'm talking from a Azure perspective, and I'm talking from a sort of infrastructure application perspective. You know, when it comes to data classification and DLP in Office 365 and Dynamics, that's your wheelhouse. You guys can go and do that. But, you know, if we have to look specifically around cloud and you know, another thing, and I'll touch on it because it's quite popular at the moment, the whole Ukraine thing, right? So the whole Russia invading Ukraine. So I don't know if you guys saw an article in the New York Times. Let me just bring it up quickly, and I'll share it quickly. This one here. Let's just share this window quickly for you guys. Share window. That one. Go. This one. Now, as the tanks rolled into the Ukraine, so did the malware. And then Microsoft entered the war as well, right? So what happened? And you'll see that there's pictures of Brad Smith, right, who's one of the Microsoft presidents, busy talking with the president, essentially using our analytics, our machine learning and our tracing. You'll see that as everything started happening, we detected it, right? We detected it based on the fact that we were securing Office 365 and we were monitoring endpoints and we were analyzing all of those threats and targets. And we had learned from this, right? We were able to then go and say, oh, well, hold on a minute. We see something funny going on here, right? We're a company and not a government. So we're watching the company inside the Ukraine. And we're able to see, hold on a minute, there is this pattern that's happening across all of them. And why is that happening, right? And so we then, wait, hold on. It's that one.
That's super interesting. I just want to make that
So
as
we
a
went
side comment.
and we then released this blog post, and you guys can go do it. It's been written by Brad Smith. It's one of again about what we did, right? And you'll see that there's a whole bunch of really cool stuff that not only just sponsoring humanitarian aid and all that lovely stuff, but we were able to, through our Threats Intelligence Center, which is the MSTIC, detect a new round of cyber attacks directed at the Ukrainian government. Okay. And then within 3 hours of the attack, okay, we were able to deploy signatures to protect against the attack and then inform the government, hey, how's it going? Check what's happening. So it could have been a lot worse, but this is one of those situations where by having us analyze those threats, we were able to sort of protect half of the Ukrainian government's stuff from getting wiped by the Russians, which is quite cool.
So what you're saying here is that Microsoft's got their own threat intelligence people and team that worries about these things at a global scale.
You know, 3,500 people strong, I think.
Yeah. So typically an organization would have some security operations analyst inside of the organization, and they'd sit inside of the Microsoft tooling, which we're going to jump into now, around monitoring what's happening to their own digital estate, right, in the cloud. X amount of VMs, some endpoints, and they've got some apps that are being run, right? And typically the incident response team would get a notification saying something's happened, and they need to go figure out what's happened and where the breach was and what data has been leaked and so forth, so on. And you saying that not only does Microsoft provide technology for customers to utilize, but they themselves also monitor. And I know there's quite a bit of AI on the back end around MITRE ATT&CK framework and all of those things. That's pretty cool. So you've just showed us what the Microsoft Security Operations Center looks like at scale, right? When it comes to what happens in countries, and that's super powerful. But how do we simplify that for organizations like, there's an insurance company that has got 700 people and they want to move to the cloud. And like you said earlier on, you need to put down the framework down on the ground with Azure policy and whatever else, right? To make sure that you are secured from the get-go. So where do they go once they're now ready to get to the cloud? What are the tools that they would necessarily use in order to start building out their security operations center?
So look, it's actually a lot easier than you would think, right? So remembering that the tools that you would use are the tools that we use, right? So from the get-go, one of the things Satya Nadella has always said is, sort of use what you sell. So like, for instance, Windows, when it gets built and deployed, is built and deployed by Azure DevOps, right? So Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio is built and deployed by Azure DevOps, right? And so Teams runs in Azure, like on AKS, right? So when you talk about scaling an application, and you come to Microsoft and you say, well, what's the biggest application that runs in AKS? I'll say Teams. I mean, you can't get much bigger than that, right? So the thing is, that threat intelligence center that I showed you, or that was involved there, is the same sort of tooling that you would get when you use Defender for Cloud. Because we're going to take those learnings and we're going to pump them into a template or a recommended best practice, or this is what we see, this is how we see it, this is why we see it. So when you go and deploy Sentinel into your organization, right, the same analytics and heuristics and machine learning that we applied for that malware detection is going to be applied to all of your logs, to your firewalls, to all of your endpoint for devices logs that get pushed through. So as much data as you're sort of willing to give us, we'll go and we'll take that data and we'll apply the same sort of heuristics to that so that we can try and give you the same information, right, from what we've learned. And like I said, templated as well, right? So we've got quick starts, we've got tutorials, all that sort of stuff. So if you look at something like this, right? So simple, what is Defender for Cloud? But you can quickly go, here, this is how you enable it on your subscription. This is what sort of prerequisites you're going to need. These are the advanced security features that you can enable. These are the hybrid and multi-cloud that we can do too, right? So not only is it an Azure thing, but it's also an AWS GCP thing. So we can also connect into your AWS environment, onboard some of those machines, and then tell you what's happening on that side of the world as well. We can do auto provisioning. We can do automated response alerts and stuff, but straight sort of like out the box. And then what you would do is you'd go and configure that sort of as you needed to. So it's not as hard as you would think. And at the same token, there's a lot of the stuff that is provided for free in some cases, because we would prefer you not get hacked from the start, right? So when you deploy a virtual machine in Azure, there's that big sort of yellow triangle that says you are leaving port 3389 open. Why? No? Was that an up hand?
No, I was waiting for people to go by that. So okay. Defender for Cloud, formerly known as Azure Security Center, right?
Correct.
And all the blog posts that talk to Defender for Cloud has got the big note on the top, like Microsoft does. They rebrand everything every 6 months.
Oh, there we are.
So what we're really talking about is Azure Security Center and Azure Defender now being merged into one product that you can now use to build out, dare I say, security posture management or cloud security posture management, using the necessary tools in there. And like you said, Warren, there's a whole bunch of things that you can do. Now, just another statement, there's Microsoft Defender for everything, right? Because
correct. So yeah, you'll see here on the side, on the left, right? You'll see databases, VMs, containers, app services, storage accounts. So we can actively scan anything that you dump into blob storage and report on that as well, right? We can actively scan any sort of DNS queries that are being made out of your Azure resources. What's happening with your key vaults, your key vault secrets and your keys. And so there's a lot of advanced threat protection that, I mean, that was initially designed for sort of Office 365, right? So ATP was like, you know, don't click on dirty links and all that sort of stuff. So advanced threat protection has now moved across into Azure. So it came from Office 365. You must remember a lot of that posture management that you did there is going to be pulled into here as well, right? So conditional access, MFA, unusual logging, or, you know, sort of all that stuff. Your just-in-time access, your GIA, your privilege access management, your PIM, your PAM, all that stuff applies to Azure as well, right? And look, I guess it's the one advantage that Microsoft has over the rest of them is the fact that there's a good chance you've got that posture in your Office 365 environment anyway. We're just going to use the same story inside of Azure as far as managing your Azure resources is concerned, you know?
So the common theme here is to start with Defender for Cloud and expand into your workloads or do some form of workload classification and then have a look at what Defender can be. I wouldn't say what version of Defender. Defender for storage, Defender for microservices, Defender for serverless. There's a whole bunch of different, I wouldn't say versions, but sections inside a Defender where you can actually enable it for a specific workload inside of your organization that you're now running in Azure, and it does different things. So am I safe in saying you would start with Defender and then enable these various components of Defender for different workloads that you're now going to
so you would enable it on a subscription level first, right? So you enable it on a subscription level first, okay? And then what you do is we start scanning and onboarding those resources as you start to turn things on. And then what we start to do is we start to put together this beautiful secure score, which is on the screen right now, with regulatory compliance, workload protection, inventory, and you'll see that there's this button here, this recommendations button, right? So what's going to happen is this secure score is going to go up or down based on the stuff that you've enabled, exactly like Office 365. You know, if you didn't have DLP turned on, or if you didn't have certain bits and pieces of Office 365 turned on, it would give you a lower score. We'll do exactly the same thing here, right? So we'll take an inventory. We'll say this virtual machine's not patched. This one's got SSH open. We'll even go down to the level as a Kubernetes cluster. I had to say Kubernetes at least once in the show. A Kubernetes cluster, for instance, has a pod running on it that is running with elevated permissions, right? So why does a pod have elevated permissions, and why perhaps is there an SSH server running on that pod? Should it be? Are you pulling the latest version of the Nginx image? Did you know that perhaps it would be better for you to build your own one, right? I mean, like, think about that Log4j vulnerability that came out, pretty much affected the entire planet, right? We could detect the Log4j problem on a container, on a Kubernetes cluster, inside your environment.
So talk to me about, and I've heard these terms being thrown around recently, workbooks, playbooks, and runbooks, right? they kind of matter somewhere in this entire world. So you deploy Defender for Cloud, you onboard the areas that you want to onboard. You now have a dashboard around what your security posture is. You can benchmark that against specific regulatory compliance standards. So if you subscribe to NIST, your secure score is going to talk to, hey, this is how NIST compliant you are. And that's really, really good when you look to compliance, or when organizations need to be compliant in a specific standard when it comes to security. And we know that they've just recently launched the new CIS benchmark, I think, for M365, which I'm quite excited about because that's our world. So Nick, you've seen quite a few things on the M365 world when it comes to exchange threat management and where it actually all starts before they actually hack your box, right? Or they hack your server, they compromise your account to get in. What are your feelings around everything that Warren said right now?
I have to take a little bit of credit because Exchange started so many things like the journey to cloud. They started the security posture to cloud, and it normalized security for us.
You know, we've had this shit at MVP summits, right, where the Exchange people say, but we started all of this.
This is true. We can't argue this. It's fact. So I'll gladly use the soapbox moment to put the soap into my hair and wash it because it's good. So I'm delighted, frankly, that we have defense for everything, and that it's normal and we need it because the amount of attack vectors that are out there are just ridiculous. And security is this never-ending rabbit hole of understanding exposure. And once you understand some of it, you just feel more and more and more naked when you understand how large your attack surface actually is. And so on one of the shows that Warren and I did, we interviewed a gentleman who, for giggles, managed to hack a very famous webcam, which we're not going to mention, with 2 HTTP calls over a weekend because he was bored. Yep. Now, that's the kind of caliber of attackers that are creating the kind of IP that is out there in the wild. And so in this show, I don't think that we are necessarily over dramatizing that we need all the help we can get. But with cloud being as large an attack surface as it is, we really do.
Okay. Yeah. So to wrap up today's show, we are saying that we need to start with Defender, Microsoft Defender. All roads when it comes to security and moving to the cloud is starting with Defender. Understand the capabilities of the tooling so that you can build out your security operations center into the various workloads that you have classified, and then plug in these bits and pieces so that your incident response team is enabled to make the right decisions at the right time to write these cool KQL queries in order to find out what's going on, one, from an AI perspective, because you've got all that telemetry data coming through from the world that is Microsoft security, because that feeds through to everyone, which is why tenanted environments are great, because you get the best of the big world in your little small world. And then make sure that your posture is managed correctly by looking at your posture management inside of something like Defender for Cloud.
I'm being considered because I'm putting up my hand, and because we are running so close to the end of the show, I'd like to put forward a formal request to do another show, at least one, with the Warren, so we can continue the conversation.
Listen, hold on. We spoke about this. We said if the people appreciate Warren's commentary and what he's given to the show, we can get them to vote.
Now.
So everyone, if you're watching the show, can you please give us a heart in the comments section? Everyone with a heart would mean to upvote Warren back again. All right.
Upvote Warren. It's like an episode of Big Brother. Do not let Warren die.
Look, it's an incredibly large topic, right? And there's so much documentation on it. And also I know we've spoken a lot about Defender today, like Azure-wise. It doesn't just work in Azure. It works everywhere. Right, so AWS, on-prem, Office 365, all that stuff. Most important part is just to start somewhere, I guess.
Yes.
So on that great note, Warren, thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for spending time with us today. Warren is a data hoarder. You can catch that episode of Azure Connect, where we talk about Warren being a data hoarder and 3-to-1 backup. But thanks everyone for joining us today, especially Warren du Toit for making time in his schedule to spend some time with Nick and myself. If you like the show, don't worry about hitting the subscribe button, because there isn't a subscribe button, because this is not a LinkedIn show. Well, this is a LinkedIn show. It's not a YouTube show. If you want to find me, you can head over to @AlistairPugin. Nicholas, where can people get hold of you?
At Nicholas Blank.
And Warren is at Warren DT on all of the.
Look at that focus. Yes.
And Warren
Well, if you haven't
squirrels like a
subscribed,
rock star.
hopefully Nick will spin this up into a YouTube show and also have an SCI Fridays, the late show, where we can deep dive for an hour with Warren on that. So Nick needs to do that. So thank you very much once again for sticking around, and we'll catch you next Friday. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.